According to the CEO of Bugatti, there's only two places in the world that are able to repair a crashed Bugatti. And only special technicians that are able to actually disassemble the vehicle and take out the engine. Well, you're standing in the third place in the world, and we have a very special technician here with us.
Whoa, it's going on!
No one thought it could be done. Not seriously, not at this level, not with something as rare and fragile as a Bugatti. The idea itself sounded absurd: crash a multi-million-dollar hypercar, watch it get written off by insurance, then track it down at a salvage auction, buy it back, and somehow bring it back to life. That's not a rebuild story people expect to end well. That's the kind of story people watch out of curiosity, waiting for it to collapse. And yet, that exact scenario is what Alex Gonzalez stepped into, fully aware of how impossible it sounded and fully committed to proving that impossible doesn't always mean unachievable. What followed didn't just challenge expectations, it completely disrupted the way people think about ownership, control, and what it actually means to rebuild something the manufacturer itself has essentially abandoned. This isn't just another car story, and if you follow it all the way through, it becomes clear that what's happening here goes far deeper than a damaged vehicle being repaired. It becomes a confrontation between two fundamentally different ideas: control versus independence, system versus individual, and ultimately, who really gets the final say over something once it's been purchased. To understand why this situation escalated the way it did, you have to start with the person at the center of it. Alex Gonzalez didn't come from the world you would normally associate with Bugatti ownership. There was no inherited fortune quietly sustaining a lifestyle of hypercars and private collections. His background tells a very different story, one built on incremental progress, risk-taking, and a willingness to learn in spaces where failure is almost guaranteed. Born in Miami to Cuban immigrant parents, Alex grew up without the safety net most people assume comes with this level of wealth. As a teenager, he wasn't surrounded by exotic cars. He was working shifts at Dunkin' Donuts, earning minimum wage, and using whatever free time he had to teach himself foreign exchange trading. While others his age were focused on school or social life, he was studying charts, testing strategies, and slowly building something that, at the time, had no guarantee of success. That process: trial, error, persistence, became the foundation of everything that came later. Whether people believe every claim about his financial rise or not, what's undeniable is the trajectory. He went from entry-level work to operating in a world where owning a Bugatti wasn't just a fantasy, it became a reality. And not just any Bugatti. The car at the center of this entire situation is a Bugatti Chiron Pur Sport, one of the most exclusive and specialized variants ever produced. Limited to just 60 units worldwide, it represents a very specific philosophy within Bugatti's lineup. Less about top speed in a straight line and more about agility, handling, and driver engagement. It's a machine engineered with obsessive precision, where every component is designed to operate within incredibly tight tolerances. The cost reflects that level of engineering, with market values ranging between $4 and $6 million depending on specification and condition. These aren't just cars. They're mechanical statements, symbols of what's possible when engineering is pushed to its limits without compromise. Owning one places you in an extremely small circle, but it also ties you into a system that operates very differently from the broader automotive world. Before the crash that would define this story, Alex's Chiron Pur Sport had already attracted attention, though not always for the reasons you might expect. In a moment that quickly spread across social media, he damaged the rear carbon fiber wing by performing squats on it. For most cars, that would be a strange but relatively harmless mistake. For a Bugatti, it's something else entirely. Carbon fiber components at this level aren't just expensive, they're engineered as structural elements, and damaging them carries consequences that go far beyond aesthetics. The repair cost alone was enough to highlight the reality of ownership at this level, where even minor incidents can translate into six-figure expenses. But that moment, as significant as it seemed at the time, was only a preview of what was coming next, resulting in extensive damage across the front structure. Airbags deployed, carbon fiber panels fractured, and more critically, there were concerns about the integrity of the monocoque, the central carbon tub that forms the structural core of the vehicle. In high-performance cars like the Chiron, The monocoque isn't just another component. It's the backbone of the entire chassis. Any compromise there raises serious questions about whether the car can ever be safely returned to its original condition. Images of the wreck eventually surfaced online, showing a vehicle that looked less like a repairable project and more like something that had reached the end of its life cycle. The insurance company's response was predictable. They declared it a total loss. For most owners, that would have been the end of the story. The payout would be accepted, the damaged car would move on through the system, and the chapter would close. But Alex made a decision that changed everything. Instead of walking away, he went after the car. When it appeared on a salvage auction platform, he placed a bid $1.6 million, which after fees came out to roughly $1.9 million. That's nearly $2 million spent on a vehicle that had already been deemed beyond economic repair. It's a decision that doesn't make sense if you look at it purely through a financial lens. But not every decision operates on pure logic. When Mat Armstrong later asked him why he did it, the answer wasn't about profit or strategy. It was about attachment. The car meant something to him, and letting it disappear wasn't an option he was willing to accept. That decision set the stage for a much larger conflict. After the buyback, Bugatti became directly involved. They sent a technician from France to inspect the vehicle in person, and the initial repair estimate came back at $1.7 million. Even in a world where million-dollar cars are the baseline, that number stands out. It effectively meant that repairing the car through official channels would cost almost as much as buying it back. A revised estimate later brought the figure down to somewhere between $600,000 and $700,000, but the underlying concern remained. Sending the car to Bugatti's facility meant entering a process where costs could evolve, expand, and potentially spiral beyond initial projections. From Alex's perspective, it wasn't just about the money, it was about control. Once the car left his possession and entered that system, he feared losing any real say in what happened next. When he declined the official repair route, Bugatti responded in a way that escalated the situation dramatically. They blacklisted the car's VIN. That single action had far-reaching consequences. It meant that no authorized Bugatti dealership anywhere in the world would supply parts for that specific vehicle. In practical terms, it turned a repairable car into something far more complicated, a machine that couldn't be serviced through the very network designed to support it. This wasn't a minor inconvenience. It was a complete shutdown of official support. Alex now owned a hypercar that, on paper, belonged to him, but in reality, existed outside the ecosystem required to maintain it. What followed was a direct challenge. Alex took to social media and issued a public ultimatum. Remove the blacklist or he would find another way, even if that meant recreating components himself. It was a bold move, one that forced a response. Mat Armstrong, the head of Bugatti at the time, reached out directly. The conversation that followed was more nuanced than many people expected. Rimac acknowledged the situation, explained the technical limitations of attempting to recreate certain components, and emphasized the safety concerns involved. At the same time, the blacklist was lifted, opening a narrow window for cooperation. For a moment, it seemed like a resolution might be possible. But that moment didn't last. The underlying disagreement remained unresolved. Bugatti's position was rooted in safety and liability. A car producing that level of performance, with potential structural damage, isn't something they can casually endorse being rebuilt outside their control. Alex's position was rooted in ownership and autonomy. He had paid for the car multiple times over and believed that gave him the right to decide how it was repaired. These two perspectives weren't just different, they were fundamentally incompatible. Could only be done at specialized facilities. Mat's team did it in a garage environment, using improvised methods that, while unconventional, proved effective. It wasn't just about proving it could be done. It was about demonstrating that the boundaries set by manufacturers aren't always absolute. As the rebuild progressed, something unexpected happened. The car didn't just come back together, it came back to life. Systems powered on, the engine started, and for the first time since the crash, the Chiron Per Sport ran again. It wasn't finished, and significant work remained, but the core achievement was undeniable. A car that had been written off, blacklisted, and effectively abandoned by its manufacturer was operational again. And that's where the deeper question emerges. This story isn't just about a rebuild. It's about ownership in a world where products are becoming increasingly controlled by the companies that create them. When you buy something, especially at this level, what are you actually buying? Is it full control? Or is it conditional access within a system that can be restricted at any time? The situation with Alex Gonzalez and his Bugatti forces that question into the open, not just for hypercars, but for technology as a whole. Because in the end, the most important part of this story isn't the crash, the rebuild, or even the conflict itself. It's what it represents. A shift in how we think about ownership, control, and the limits of independence in a system designed to keep everything within its boundaries. And whether you see Alex's decision as bold or reckless, one thing is clear. This isn't a closed chapter. It's the beginning of a much larger conversation.